This is the ALTRA VIA OLYMPUS, and it was not what I was expecting. Let's get into it. Look at this big chunk of midsole right here. What do you expect when you see a shoe like this? What I mean is, what type of ride do you expect? Something soft, right? Something plush. In fact, I've seen a few shoe reviewers that have actually described the ride of the ALTRA VIA OLYMPUS as being plush. Guys, it's not. It is its own ride, but it is certainly not plush. But we're going to talk about the ride in just a second. Why don't we start off with price? Because right now you can buy a pair of the ALTRA VIA OLYMPUS for around $170 from Roadrunner Sports. And of course, I will place a link in the show notes below in case you want to pick up a pair for yourself. Let's get into some of these specs, because maybe the specs will lead you in a different direction than it led me. First of all, weight. Weight is always important in a shoe. I think it's one of the first things that we look at right after price. And Altra claims that a US men's size 9 is going to tip the scale at 11 ounces, which is about 312 grams. Of course, I don't wear a US men's size 9. I wear a US men's size 13 in Altra. And in my size, it tips the scale at 12.5 ounces, which is about 355 grams, which actually I am pretty impressed with. 355 grams for a shoe of this stature. It feels just very big in my hand. It looks big on the camera, and for it to only weigh 355 grams, it's actually pretty surprising. In fact, as I sit here looking at it, it feels lighter in my hands than it really should be. Now, I've already drawn your attention to this big chunk of midsole right here. Now, this is Altra's highest stack height shoe that they've ever made. In fact, it's 33 millimeters. And of course, you already know this, but on the off chance that someone watching this video isn't familiar with Altra shoes, Altra features their balanced cushioning. And ultimately what that means is that there is no difference between the front of the shoe and the back of the shoe. We have a 33 millimeter stack height along the whole midsole. And basically that means that your heel is at the same height as your forefoot when you're walking, when you're running. It just makes for a more natural motion. We are going to circle back to the midsole, but let's start at the top. Let's work our way down. And you can see just by looking at the top of the shoe, we have a lot of padding. We have a lot of padding around the heel collar. In fact, I really like the way it looks. We have some reflective elements here on the medial side and on the lateral side, and it kind of pillows out. It does go to the inside too, and it kind of feels like a bolster along the sides. So the sides of these shoes will kind of pinch the back of your heel, and it holds your heel in place nicely. If we look at the heel counter, we have this midsole material kind of wrapping up, but it's not absolutely rigid. In fact, I can still push it down a little bit, but nevertheless, I didn't experience any heel slip in the ALTRA VIA OLYMPUS, and I had a pretty good lockdown. In fact, it was a very comfortable feeling shoe to put my foot into. And now that I'm actually talking about the VIA OLYMPUS, I realize, or at least I hope, when other people have described the shoe as plush, maybe they're talking about the upper, because the upper does kind of feel plush. It feels very comfortable, very padded, and very much like a slipper when you put your foot into it. Now, look at this toe box right here. It's pretty wide. It's because Altra is using their original toe box shape. Now, Altra used to only have their original toe box shape, because it's the original, but later on they introduced two other sizes that generally get narrower. But the ALTRA VIA OLYMPUS has the original foot shape, which makes it the widest toe box possible from Altra. And guys, if you haven't had an Altra shoe with the original toe box shape, you are in for a treat, because your feet just feel unrestricted. Now, the upper does lock down nicely, but your feet have room to kind of splay out as they go into the shoe. So if you find yourself running long events where your feet may tend to swell, you may find that Altra shoes work a lot better for you, especially if you like to have your feet splay, or maybe if you have wider feet. Just on the whole, it's a very more natural foot shape, which is the whole thing that Altra is going for with their foot shaped toe box. We've got some nice reinforcements, underlays around the upper, around the toe box, just to keep that toe box material up above your foot, again contributing to the comfort. Along the eyelet chain, we have some reinforcement, and then just some plastic inserts just to make sure that you can tighten down those laces and get that good lockdown across your midfoot. And the upper is extremely lightweight. It's very breathable. Now let me hold that up so you can see right across here. But we've got these laser cut holes that just provide a lot of ventilation when your foot is in the shoe, and those of course come around the side. But on the sides, it doesn't really work the same, because we've got material kind of covering it on the other side. But on your toe box, this is where the breathability really matters, because it allows your toes to cool as they splay out in comfort. All in all, the upper is very enjoyable. It's really comfortable. It's really fun to put your foot into the VIA OLYMPUS. All right, coming down to the midsole, because obviously this is where the magic happens or doesn't happen on running shoes. Now, this is Altra's Ego Max midsole. It's a compression molded EVA, and Altra is featuring their rocker geometry, which just helps contribute to a nice smooth and fast toe off. If I hold it up, you can actually see that toe spring coming right up there. Now, when I look at something like this, I think, ooh, that's going to be a comfortable, that's going to be a soft, it's going to be a very plush ride. And you know what? When I put my foot into this shoe and I walked around the house before I went out for my first run, I was like, yeah, this shoe feels pretty good. Pretty excited to go out for this shoe to kind of massage my feet as I run, to just feel like a recovery run with every step. But if you watch any other reviews on this shoe and you hear someone say, oh, it's a plush ride, don't believe them. This is a very firm ride. Now, Altra uses their Ego Max foam in other shoes, but it seems clear that they have tweaked the formulation of the Ego Max in the Via Olympus to make it just a little more firm. Let me be clear, the firmness is not necessarily a bad thing. There are a lot of people out there and there are a lot of circumstances in which a firmer foam is exactly what you want. Now, this firm foam in the Via Olympus, even though it is a 33mm stack height, which is pretty high, the firm foam actually contributes to a little more road feel. So even though it's a max cushion shoe, because the foam is so dense, it feels like I can feel the road a lot more. Obviously, I can't feel the road with 33mm of foam between my foot and the road, but it seems like I can. You know what I'm saying? So needless to say, but I'm still going to say it, that my first run, when I took out the Via Olympus, I was a little less than thrilled. Let's just leave it at that. I was less than thrilled. I went out expecting a very plush, soft ride. I only went out for easy miles. I wasn't expecting to pick up the pace. And I came back and I looked at the shoe and I was like, oh man, I don't even know if I'm gonna review this shoe because I don't think I can really test it out long enough. I did not enjoy my first run in this shoe. But ultimately, this comes down to a life lesson of shorts, and that is to temper your expectations. Because if I hadn't expected something that this shoe was not, I wouldn't have been disappointed. So what did I do? I took this shoe out again. And then I took it out again, and then I took it out again. And you know what? It actually started to grow on me. Now, I should caution you here that if you haven't run in a zero drop shoe before, you can't just buy a zero drop shoe if you've been using shoes with a higher drop and go out and run a marathon. In fact, I shouldn't even use that high of a distance. I would say you can't go out and run just 10 miles in this shoe. I mean, you could, and I have done it, but you start to get little aches and pains. And the primary reason for that is because most of the shoes that we run in, they have a slight drop, usually anywhere between 4 and 10mm. And there are a lot of shoes that I've actually reviewed that go up to 12mm. And just in a nutshell, from a non-scientific person who doesn't really understand body anatomy, when you run in a low drop shoe, it activates your calves more. So if you haven't been running in a zero drop shoe, you're gonna come back and you're gonna find that your calves are getting pretty achy. That's because you don't have that drop where your heel is just slightly higher than your forefoot, and it's making you work your calves. It also contributes to more ankle motion than when you run in shoes that have a higher drop. Now, when you run in shoes with higher drop, you're going to have less ankle motion, but you're going to have more hip motion. And also, shoes with a higher drop tend to work your quads and your glutes more than shoes with a lower drop. And ultimately, that's my warning. That's my buyer beware. If you want to switch to a zero drop shoe, just got take it easy, kind of work into it. And I've actually learned this lesson the hard way a couple of times. The last time, I have it down here just for show and tell, is when I got this, the Vanish Carbon, which I absolutely loved. And this shoe felt so fun and light on my foot. There's a carbon fiber plate. The Ultra Vanish Carbon is, I'd say it's my favorite Ultra ever, and I loved it. And it was so fun to take out and run in and run fast in that I put too many miles too soon in it, and I started getting little aches and pains that I wasn't used to. So with the Via Olympus, I actually learned my lesson this time. I've been taking it easy, and I've been going out for shorter runs. And I've got to say, it's working. My body's feeling pretty good, even though I've been running in the zero drop shoe. Okay, so even though I said that the ride is extremely firm when I went out for that first run, and I was shocked at the firmness when I was expecting something a little more comfortable, a little more soft, later on, after several runs, when I took the shoe out and I started picking up the pace just a little bit. Oh, I think I'm still getting ahead of myself. Now, if you've been watching me for a while, if you see these shoe review videos, if you follow me on Instagram and you see my running footage, you know that I am definitely a heel striker, especially when I'm running easy. Now, when you run in a zero drop shoe, the zero drop contributes to kind of encouraging you to land midfoot to forefoot. Again, that is primarily why you start getting a little calf soreness if you're not used to it. So I am a heel striker, and when I run in a zero drop or balanced cushion shoe, it does encourage me to land more midfoot to forefoot. Here's the thing, even though I'm a heel striker at slower speeds, when I tend to pick up the pace, my landing does kind of shift forward a little bit, and I do land in the midfoot, in the forefoot just a little more, until I get tired, then that kind of shifts back to the heel area. But I don't know why I'm giving you a complete rundown of my running style. Doesn't really fit with what we're talking about. What I was trying to get to is that when I picked up the pace in the Via Olympus, when I would normally land midfoot to forefoot, the shoe felt 10 times better. Now, the Via Olympus, this is a maxed cushion kind of daily trainer. It is not a speed shoe. It's not a shoe that I would recommend that you use if you want to go out and do a tempo run. Certainly wouldn't pick this shoe for going out and running intervals. And yet, For me, the shoe felt a lot better when I picked up the pace, just because when I do pick up the pace, it's a little more natural for me to run how this shoe wants me to run. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. So who do I think this shoe is for? First and foremost, if you are an ultra person, I think this is definitely one that you're going to want to have in your shoe collection. It does have a nice upper. It has that original toe box, which just gives that traditional ultra feel. It has a nice and plush upper. It feels super comfortable on your feet. And if you traditionally land midfoot to forefoot, you're going to be able to take advantage of their rocker geometry a lot easier than if you're a heel striker like me. And of course, if you do pick up the pace just a little bit, or if you run consciously landing on your midfoot or forefoot, which is pretty difficult to do for a long period of time. Like I can make myself land here or here, but after like a couple of minutes, my mind starts drifting off and I forget what I'm doing. And if I'm running slow enough, I start heel striking again. But if you are a midfoot or forefoot striker, I see no reason why the ALTRA VIA OLYMPUS isn't going to work perfectly for you, or any ultra shoe in fact. Now coming down to the outsole, we can see that we do have this outsole rubber pad that kind of traces the metatarsals of your foot. We've got these flex grooves in the middle, which actually contributes to the forward motion and the rocker geometry. However, it is not a flexible shoe, and I'm having a very difficult time. Well, you know, if I put an immense amount of force, it does get pretty flexible, but honestly, probably not going to be putting that much force into bending your shoe. So not really a flexible shoe, but again, every shoe doesn't have to be flexible. As far as the price goes, for me, I don't know. I often say with shoes that are a little more expensive, yeah, it's totally worth it, but guys, to be honest, that's because the shoe that I'm talking about works for me. At $170, I don't know, seems a little expensive, only because the shoe isn't ideal for me at all situations. Does that make sense? So remember, these opinions are my own, and I'm using my own experiences running in them to give you this information. Oh, I haven't talked about the tongue. The tongue is not gusseted, but we do have a nice lace loop here in the middle, and I didn't experience any tongue slip as I was running. But again, that upper is just plush. When people are saying plush, they're talking about the upper. Feels good on your foot. My friends, I would love to hear from you. Have you run in the ALTRA VIA OLYMPUS? Have you tried the Ego Max foam that may be a little firm? And if not, and if you're thinking about getting the VIA OLYMPUS, drop any comments you like in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer them all. And if you have made it to this point in the video, first of all, thank you very much. Second of all, why don't you put the diamond emoji in the comments, just so I know that you've stayed all the way to the end of the video. And you know what? The diamond emoji, don't look into it. Don't look into that a diamond is the hardest substance known to man. That isn't an indication of how stiff this midsole foam is. Not at all. But anyway, be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.